Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I know there's probably just a few more people coming on. First of all, we just want to welcome everyone today for joining us. I don't know how many of you have been doing Zoom calls and webinars, but this is actually a webinar, so you won't actually have the opportunity to speak on the call. It's not a Zoom call, but a webinar, but you do have the opportunity to submit questions through either the chat function, which is at the bottom of your screen, or the Q&A function. Through the chat function, you can send the question, it goes to everyone, or you can do it through the Q&A function. We will try to answer as many questions as we can. So far, there's over 82 of you over online right now, so we may not be able to get to every question. We are excited to have you on board, excited to share some of this information today. I want to welcome Andrew, I want to welcome Tom and Mike. And Andrew, I am going to turn it over to you so you can pray for us before we start.
Okay, thanks, Allison. Holy Father, we thank you so much for this day, and we thank you for the opportunity to serve you through Christ Church, and for us to be your hands and feet and fulfill your plan to reach people and renew communities. And Lord, we ask especially for your blessing upon this webinar tonight, and we ask for your blessing upon our activities as the COVID-19 crisis continues to provide new opportunities for us to reach more people and continue to renew communities. And we just ask for a hedge of protection around everybody that attends Christ Church and Christ Church staff, that we may continue to stay safe and healthy and well as we continue to, Lord willing, to emerge from this crisis moving forward and continue to help people and lean into your mission as a church. And we ask these things in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Andrew. We are going to keep this to an hour, so we're going to turn it over to Mike, and then at the end there'll be some time for some questions, but we do want to try to keep it to an hour. So Mike.
Well, greetings everyone from Atlanta. I'm at my in-laws. I was just told that I needed to mute Sherry, who is on a different Zoom call. It will be impossible for me to mute Sherry. I wouldn't even try, but her parents are in one room talking with our boys. Sherry's in another room talking with them. I'm talking with you. And so, yes, it feels very COVID 21st century. But anyway, so what I'm going to do is answer a bunch of the questions that have been coming in. And so I'll try and move as quickly as I can. Appreciate you being on and appreciate your concern about Christ Church. So let me start with the most generic question I've received. How is the church doing? By God's grace, the church is doing well. I believe we moved through the first 6 weeks following COVID very well. That's called phase 1. As COVID rolled out, we pivoted quickly, did a number of things that you know about, an online service. We started a care structure, phoning people. We got a remote working place thing in place, e-shig meetings, small group support groups online. We did all of that. If you've heard me talk about the church in the past, it's always to say the church is at least 3 different things. It's a cause, it's a community, and it's a corporation. The cause, I'm encouraged that many are leaning into the call, the opportunity, the charge to be the church, to serve, to love and care for others. And so the mission goes on. And you see some of that, videos that come out in the online services or in the daily update, the Rev 7-9 work that's going on in Highwood, the Goods in Bangkok, Emmanuel Agunyemi we're supporting in Nigeria. There's lots of other programs. The bottom line is we have more people who want to serve than we have places for them to serve. And that's the thing. I feel a little like we really want to mobilize and deploy the church, but I'm encouraged by that. I'm encouraged that there's people that are growing. There's people that are soft to the things of God right now. More people are sort of electronically raising their hands in our services and saying they want to get in a small group or they want to talk with somebody. So that's been good. In terms of community, how is the community doing? How are the people doing? It's always mixed, right? We've been calling people, checking in as best we can. We have, a couple thousand phone calls that'll be made again this month to follow up with people. And so we also, of course, lean on small group leaders to let us know how everyone is doing. And there's a prayer network. So we get reports on people. I have to say, it feels a little distant to me. I don't feel like I know how everybody is doing by any means. We know there have been about a dozen people who have been COVID positive, maybe another dozen or more who think they had it. As testing rolls out and as antibody tests roll out, we're getting more accurate information. But everybody that I know of that had COVID or that has COVID is doing well. A few were in ICU briefly, but they are out. And so I know a number of people who've lost jobs or who expect to. There's stress in families. I know that, I'm aware of all of that. But I think people are moving forward and people want to care for each other. And then briefly, how's the corporation doing? If the church is a cause and it's a community, it's also a corporation. Lots of things that we measure, as you can imagine. The most obvious ones are attendance and money. Attendance. So we have an online service and we've got lots of data. We get analytics because that's, it's online. We know exactly how many people tune in and exactly how long they tune in for. We don't know what to do with any of that data. So we're trying to get smart about it. And we don't know if a screen represents 5 people sitting in a living room watching together, a small group watching. We've got some small groups that have started to gather again to watch it. If it's one person who turned the TV or their laptop on and walked out of the room, if it's one person who's sort of watching church, sort of making waffles, sort of reading the New York Times. We just don't have any idea. But there are some numbers, and I think that they will go up on a screen. Now, I have to say, we haven't quite figured this out. I cannot see the screen if there is a screen showing you a chart. But if there is a chart, is there a chart, Allison? I can see you. Yes, there's a chart.
There's a chart with unique viewers, and it shows the unique viewers from March 15th through April 19th.
Okay. But what we don't know about that, again, is what the multiplier on that would be. It suggests, first read, it suggests sort of perhaps a lot of people watching and people from other states and even some other countries, but we're trying to figure that out. In terms of budget, giving has been solid. We made budget for March and April. And additionally, we applied for the small business PPP loan and received that. So just to frame this historically, March was our 24th month, the last month of the pledge period for Reach. And we were going to celebrate all of that in the Genesee Theater. Let me say thank you to those of you who helped us finish strong with Reach. We came in just under 15 million, 14.9 million towards our goal of 16.3. Which was a 2-year campaign, but with a 3-year execution. So we will be continuing to roll out initiatives in the coming months. And of course, this is church plant in Ghana and India and Turkey and our work in North Chicago, Matthew Homes, the Vernon Hills campus, and other things. So I guess what I could say about finances is that by God's grace, we entered sheltering in place in a good spot financially because of Reach, because of your generosity. Over the years, we've seen a lot of people transition from giving in the offering plate to some sort of online giving. That has helped us as we go forward. As an aside, I'm in several pastor support groups that are meeting online right now as we're comparing notes, like what are you doing and how's it working, and we're sharing ideas. Many churches are doing well financially right now. And so there's just been a lot of people stepped up and are supporting local churches, which is very encouraging. Now, many churches are not doing well. I hear of churches that where giving is off 20 or 30%. No one expects giving to remain strong. There's 30 million people unemployed. We are trying to cut costs where we can. We're putting projects on hold. We're not filling some open positions, all the things you would expect other organizations to do. We're doing that. We're watching our finances carefully. We are trying to do what we can to free up, to streamline all our expenses so we have more money to give away and to be generous with. We're also, we're in the budgeting process right now. So we're running scenarios if giving is down 10%. What if giving is down 25%? How do we adjust? So yes, we're asking, we have an annual meeting coming up. We'll be doing more about the budget and all of that in the coming months. Another question I get is, how are you doing? So let me just say, Sherry and I are doing well. We are healthy. We feel very fortunate to be moving through this pandemic with so few inconveniences or challenges. Our boys and Hannah, our daughter-in-law, everybody's doing well. For the most part, the rest of the staff are doing well. Like the rest of the world, the staff have a variety of different experiences because some of our staff, like Sherry and I, we don't have any children that are at home. Others have a number of children that are at home. I think that's probably a very different experience if you have 3 or 4 people under the age of 10 or 12 at home. I am aware, just as an aside, that there is concern voiced by more than a few that church staff will burn out in 6 months. And I am trying to pay attention to that personally, and we are trying to pay attention to that as a staff to sort of navigate a different cadence for the next 6, 12, 18 months. So I appreciate all the people that are wondering how we're doing. We're doing well. The third question I get most frequently is, what can I do? I want to do something. And I have said to folks, thank you, good. Yes, serving and caring for others is a way forward in the midst of this challenge. One of the things selfishly I would ask is that you would be our eyes and ears. Fill us in where you see something going wrong, when you see people struggling. We're not obviously looking for gossip, but we don't want to miss out caring for people. And we are lacking some of the ongoing existing structures that allow us to know how people are doing. Second, I say to people, it's very important for all of us that you seek God at this time, that your walk with Christ is as important to others now as it's ever been. And so to the extent that you pursue Christ and pursue holiness, that's great. And of course, I would ask you to pray, and we've got prayer opportunities such as tomorrow night. So a fourth question, and I'm sorry for moving quickly, but and I'm sorry that the grandfather alarm clock is going off in the background. I don't know how to turn that off, but what is the church doing? So I've said the church is doing well. What exactly is the church doing? Well, we are not holding really face-to-face worship meetings, as you know. We do not have many people in the offices. Very rarely are we asking people to come in right now. That will change soon, but and then of course we've canceled or postponed a number of things, such as most of our mission trips, the pilgrimage to Israel, lots of work parties in North Chicago. We're doing most everything else. In fact, when people ask me, when is the church going to reopen? I want to say the church didn't close. So there are buildings that we occupy that are being regulated more tightly. But in terms of the church, in terms of the mission of God, in terms of the people of God, we haven't closed. So during the lockdown, we're in a different mode, but we want to keep the mission going. And we do have lots of the normal things going. Lots of staff working to care for people, plan services, keep things moving forward. We're doing a lot of the ministries that we've been doing in the past, just differently, such as the prayer meeting I mentioned. We had a women's event with Jen Wilkins a while back, a forum online for men, the group summit last week. We've been doing other things online. I'm interviewing John Lennox as part of this mental health thing coming up. We have lots of staff and elder and finance and small groups and support group meetings via Zoom. And then there's some things that we're doing that are new. So the daily, well, the online service is the biggest one, but then the daily update email, hundreds of phone calls being made to check up on people. We've ramped up our efforts to try and help other local churches. There's programs going on in Highwood to try and help some of the people particularly challenged there. One of the new things we've done is a COVID opportunity task force. So in an effort to triage the requests that have been coming in for help, we've got an elder, a deacon, some members of St. James, a couple staff, including people from local and global missions, and some people at large that are, and they were given an initial disbursement of $100,000. And we said, talk with each other, all the requests that you're seeing coming in, make sure that we're handling these well, figure out how to navigate all these requests, keep us posted. This group is meeting weekly and has allocated about a third of the initial funds that we've given to them. I mean, really, right now, I'd say we feel a little bit like the local hospitals. We are prepared. We've seen a spike, but so far our systems have not been overrun. Next question I get increasingly is, when will you be open for services? And the answer is, because things are politically and medically uncertain, we don't know. We are assuming that when sheltering in place ends, or to use Pritzker's terms, we move out of phase 2 into phase 3, we will be in an extended period while we're waiting for sort of the all clear siren to be sounded. And that, we don't know how long that's going to be. We expect that during that time, there's going to be sort of phased in approaches in which government restrictions and medical restrictions are progressively relaxed, and schools and companies reopen, the economy takes some steps back. We sort of think that at first the gatherings will be limited to, more small group size, and then limited up to 50, and that we will need to have procedures in place of face masks and temperatures being taken. And then it will, after a while, increase to 100 people. It could go back down. There could be a spike. We're preparing for a scenario in which there is a return of the pandemic and we have to go back into lockdown for a little bit. The good news is we have states that are opening up now and we can watch what they're doing. I'm in touch with people in Georgia and Texas, pastors that are opening back up, and talking with them daily about what they're doing and how it's working. A friend of mine in a larger church in Texas opened up this past weekend. I asked him how many people he expected at the service. He said half of their normal attendance. And I called him today and they had 13% of their normal attendance. And he said, honestly, they have about 100 staff. He says, if you take out the staff, we probably were 5%. So they were open and they had all kinds of accommodations for people to socially distance and be in their space, but it just didn't work. So we're going to watch all of that. We want to move as quickly and as prudently as we can safely move. And so we're expecting there's going to be some sort of reservation system to control size. We're going to have really, we want to have guidelines for cleanliness and health and to protect everyone. We're going to continue our online service so that people that don't feel comfortable coming out will still be cared for. While I'm here, let me say, we intend to comply with government restrictions, but we do not believe that legal permission will necessarily equal social behavior. So we expect that many people will go more slowly. That's what the data is suggesting to us. So as a general rule, we're going to watch the local schools carefully and try and mirror what they're doing. We want to be open when they're open. But we're aware, again, that for an extended period of time, there are those who are older or who have health issues who will likely be encouraged to stay away from gatherings like the church. So we will want to be creative in attending to their needs and concerns. So let me, I'm sorry to just be a talking head here, but let me move through 10 points that I sort of scribbled down a couple weeks ago for my own sanity, having read too much about COVID and churches and next steps. And just sort of a reminder for me and the staff, but perhaps these are helpful to you as well. One, we remain fully engaged with our mission and vision. So COVID-19 has disrupted things, but not the call of God. We remain committed to fueling a movement that reaches people and renews communities. In fact, I believe that the COVID pandemic has created some new opportunities for the gospel. I think the church can be at her best during a crisis. And so we are viewing all of this as faith and optimism and seeing it as an opportunity for the church to push forward, not to shrink back. Two, I suspect that COVID-19 is more of a glacier than an earthquake. Unlike 9/11, which left few lasting changes, it seems likely that this virus will bring some lasting change. I think it's going to be, I don't think we're going to go back to normal. It's going to be this new normal. That's almost a cliche now. But we are trying to prepare for the new and the next. Three, for now, we have shortened our planning window and are trying to become more nimble. We like to operate with a 12 to 18 month planning horizon. No one thinks that's a great idea right now. So we are focused on June and July and doing scenario planning for August and September. Four, we are assuming that the economic recovery will be more U-shaped than V-shaped. I'm praying it's not L-shaped. I really don't want it to be W-shaped even. You read all these things. We think that it's probably 6 to 9 months before our economy gets some vitality back, and it may be longer than that before it returns to to 2019 levels. So we are expecting the economy to be down. 5, we believe smaller groups are going to be a bigger part of our future. Given that large gatherings are likely months away, we are going to lean more fully into smaller gatherings, both those that meet in homes, those that meet at the church, those that gather in other places. We believe that both the path back and for many, the new plan is going to be small groups. And so we are trying to lean more fully into our support and care for our small group leaders of all sides. 6, because of this, small group leaders are more important. 6, online church is here to stay. One of the wins of the last few weeks, 2 months, I guess, has been the online service. Look, I believe there's value in meeting together, and I believe we were made to meet together. I believe that the excitement surrounding the online service will fade for a while. I think it's already fading a little bit. But we also believe that the online service is part of our future going forward. See it as having value as a front door to our physical sites and as a standalone for others. And so online service, I know that's one of the questions I got from a number of you. Will it continue? We expect for it to continue. 8, I think the fall is going to be crazy, just given the fact that we may or may not have sports, we may or may not have college students back at any big levels. There's a presidential election, there's job loss and economic decline, and who knows what's going on with COVID. I was concerned for the last 6 months that half the country wouldn't accept the results of the election, whatever the results are. And so I just think we've got some challenges coming that way. 8, I believe that we need to prepare for a wave of hurting people. I think some individuals and families are weathering sheltering in place quite well, but others are struggling. Self-quarantining has led to a spike in anxiety. It's robbed addicts of support groups. It's exposed tensions in marriage. On top of this, you got financial challenges from job loss and 401k plans being compromised. There's just a lot of people not doing well. We need, as the church, to be prepared to care for people who are hurting. And the last point I wrote down was that we need to prepare for giving to the church to go down. So again, we entered the pandemic with a healthy balance sheet, and during the last 2 months, giving has remained strong, but with 30 million newly unemployed people, we are expecting giving to go down and benevolence needs to go up. And I believe that many at Christ Church will want want to help those that are struggling. And so we believe we're a good conduit for that. And so we are trying to find ways to position ourselves to that end. Allison, you got to take mute off.
Sorry about that. Mike, if you don't mind, if you all have questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, or through the chat function, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can tonight. So as you continue.
Okay, so do we have questions yet? I am not seeing them.
We don't have any questions yet.
Okay, I'm going to keep, I have proved I can keep talking. So there's a number of other things that I could say. I mean, a number of other things that we're sort of aware of. We think one of the opportunities that's coming up will be to start some satellite Christchurch communities. We're seeing, again, we get data. We can see that there's lots of people tuning into Christchurch in Florida, Naples in particular. We think we're going to have an opportunity to continue our work to try and support local churches that are struggling. We expect there to be a wave of bonus babies, already starting to hear of some bonus babies coming out of COVID. Also expect there to be some marriages that are breaking up. We expect to have to be really smart about developing health and safety practices for all of our sites, and are committed to doing that. So let me go to some of the questions that were turned in to me, other questions turned in this week. How are our mission partners doing? So things around the world differ, but in general, where our mission partners are, they're worse, especially for the poor. In addition to COVID, you have poverty. You have some places you have government oppression. Things are getting worse for some of our mission partners, particularly Turkey and India and Africa. You got the locust. So we're seeing increased need, increased opportunities for the gospel, and we want to lean into that. We're also seeing humanitarian crises emerging. Second question, what's happening with the Vernon Hills campus? And is this something we might postpone? Well, so Christchurch Vernon Hills was going to launch on Easter, and we scrambled and got the building ready, and then this happened. Jonathan Neef, the campus pastor for Christchurch Vernon Hills, has been meeting with his team on an ongoing basis. They sort of continue every Sunday evening to meet online. And we hope and plan to start when we can start. The grand opening is obviously not going to happen soon, but we're cautiously optimistic. What is Christ?
Mike?
Yes.
Along the lines of Vernon Hills, there is a question that came up about what is our expectation for the number of members and the growth for that, and how long is our lease at the new location, et cetera?
Well, so why don't you answer the lease question?
Thank you.
Well,
no, so we have a lease that goes through February of 2021, but it does have very flexible terms because we have 90 days out clauses. So should we decide that it's not working, we have the option to out. We also have the option to extend it. So we have quite a bit of flexibility with the lease.
In terms of the, I don't believe Anson's on this call. In terms of the team, so we were shooting to have a launch team of about 80, hopefully closer to 100, and 200 at the first meeting. So that was the plan. In church planting, you sort of, you get your core team, you want to see everybody at the launch, invite somebody. So we would be at 200 at launch. The expectation is it would drop back down to about 100 the next week, but hopefully grow quickly after that. So that was the plan. We were, I think, going to, at the Genesee Theater, we were going to commission 60, 70 people who were going to be part of that launch team. So we were, that was the plan, and that remains the plan, although the plan is a little fluid.
I will say that they are meeting, the launch team is meeting on a regular basis each week on Sunday afternoons. And they are continuing to reach out into the community. They have a blood drive coming up on June 4th that they're going to be doing there with the opportunity to serve more than 300 people combined with the American Red Cross. So they are reaching out into the community and looking for ways to help people.
Yep. The next question, I know Tom is on the line, so let me move to that. What is Christ Church's position on helping folks financially who are struggling? So Tom chairs the St. James Ministry, our benevolence ministry. So Tom, can you unmute yourself and jump on and answer that question?
Sure, thanks, Mike. So St. James is open for business. We're helping people. We always have, and largely things are unchanged in the sense of our procedures and protocols and what we're going through. So people with both non-COVID and COVID-related crises, we are absolutely active in helping in. I think an important thing is what, Mike, you said early on in this presentation is that we need people to be the eyes and ears of the congregation. So oftentimes we're not aware of people that need help. And so sometimes that's encouraging someone, if you know someone who's lost a job or has a health issue or something going on, to reach out and make that known and see if St. James can help. Several different ways to reach out to St. James. I want to just take a moment and remind that. One way is just to contact your campus pastor. And that's a great way to do so that they can help talk with you a little bit too, but get your information to St. James so that we can get involved. Also through the prayer request line. So that's a great way too to reach out to get help from St. James. If you know people that are on St. James, you can also speak to them individually. And I would encourage anybody to feel free to call or email me at any time. My contact information is accessible through the church resources, and feel free to do so. And then what historically had been the most common way was people would just call the church office and be connected to the St. James voicemail. We do have a voicemail line, but if you call the church office, you're not going to get the access to the St. James voicemail. So I'm going to give a phone number now here. If you want to write it down, please do. It's an 847 number. So it's 847-457-7290. Now that's an access into the Christ Church voicemail, where you then enter the St. James extension, which is simply 1001. So if someone calls that number and then enters 1001, they'll be able to leave a confidential voicemail and leave their contact information, and then someone from St. James will call back. It's important to know too that what we do at St. James is all confidential. So people that we help, that is treated with respect and with privacy, and going through that, that's a very important thing. I think the biggest issue we've seen that's changed is access to food. Getting food, having funds for food, that's been something that we've noticed. But we, of course, are still helping people with rent, mortgage, utility bills, medical bills, working closely with Justice Center too. And so I would just encourage people that if you have a need or you know someone has a need, please reach out to St. James. We are ready and willing to help.
Thank you, Tom, and thanks for being on the call. Thanks also for all the work that St. James does and has done well. A few more questions, and then I'm out of questions. So I'll just warn the group here. Does the church have reserve funds to cover fixed costs? So the deacons have a deacon operating reserve designated to offset operating costs in times like this. It's obviously not unlimited, cover 1 month's fixed cost. The finance equation would take a long time to go into. We have a lot of people that are very thoughtful on this. I'm not gonna try and answer those questions other than to say, as part of the budgeting process, we will, as we have in the past, I mean, there'll be Zoom calls, I'm imagining, this year, but we'll have a number of Zoom calls to explain the proposed budget and to answer any questions you might have on the budget. You can also call our Director of Operations, Director of Finance, or talk to the deacons if you have more specific questions about that. I have invited people, next question. I've invited people to watch the online service. Many have watched. Surprisingly, many are more inclined to watch online than to attend the church. Are there marketing and communication plans to get the word out about our great services? So let me say, I do think, again, I'm very proud of the team. I think we've always had such great talent on the worship side of things, musicians and others, the technical teams, all of that. It's been really remarkable to see how quickly and well people have pulled together services. And so I do think that I get it that people are sending these out to other folks. We have a team right now, a cross-functional team that is working on Christ Church Online. We did not intend to launch an online campus, but we have. And so now we are in this, it's a cliche, but this is one time it seems like the cliche is accurate. We're building the plane while we're flying it. So we're trying to figure this out, and we're trying to figure out what this service would look like and how we would, what kind of technical requirements it has, what kind of staffing issues it raises, the cost, the budget. And part of that would be marketing. So yes, we're trying to figure that out. Again, it wasn't on the docket of things we were going to be working on. And so we're a little behind, but we're moving forward. Second to last question. When we come back, what will children's ministry look like? This is a great question. And what I can tell you is that we're working on it. One of the things that I've been asking my pastor friends in Texas and in Georgia is, what are you doing with children? Because we know that we cannot welcome children back until we can keep them safe. And we know that young children in particular are not going to social distance. They're not going to wear a mask. They're not going to keep 6 feet away. And so what do we do? So the first thing is, as we come back, we expect families to sit together. We'll, see people every other we'll figure out how to sort of keep families together, and we'll step back that way. We are also, we will have aggressive cleaning policies. We will have temperatures checked. We will be making this safe for kids before we welcome kids back. Now, we don't have it all figured out yet. And so all I can tell you is we're not ready to have kids back. We're trying to support families. We're trying to support parents with their children. And we're coming out with some additional programming and other things to support parents at home as they are the spiritual shepherd for their family, which they obviously always are the primary spiritual shepherd and guardian for their own children. Last question I have, unless someone is sending them in, what are you excited about? So I'm actually excited about a number of things. I'm ready to, I feel a little guilty in that it feels to me like we're still responding more than I'd like us to be. So obviously we've got to pivot, and I keep feeling like I'm moving out of the response into a more proactive, thoughtful ministry posture, but honestly, don't always feel that way at the end of the day. But I'm excited about the opportunities for the gospel. I'm excited about the fact that people are more spiritually open. I'm excited about this mental health series that we're doing coming up. I'm preaching this upcoming weekend out of 1 Kings 19, and then Dr. Phil Ryken, the president of Wheaton, is preaching out of Psalm 142. He's sharing his own personal struggles with depression. We have a number of supplements to this. A private Fernando Ortega concert. It will be done online, but Brad will be talking with him about Psalms and music as helping people with anxiety. I'm interviewing John Lennox, a very prominent apologist about science and faith. There's just a number of good things happening, and I'm encouraged by that. So yeah, these pivot points can be great opportunities for the church to surge ahead. And by the church, I mean you, you and me, sharing with our neighbors, loving each other, caring for each other, having our own understanding of what matters, readjusted in light of bigger, more important things. So,
Mike, I've got some questions for you.
okay.
All right. One question that came in was, are there plans for a weekly, midweek Bible discipleship study? And if so, we have some people that would love to help with that.
Okay. So I'm writing this down. A couple things. First of all, one of the questions, backing up from this, one of the questions that we've been asking is, how do you make disciples in a Zoom culture? Like, what do we, as we reposition ourselves in light of this, what are the things that have to go away, but what are the things that are critical? And obviously making disciples and seeing people grow in faith is critical. So there are a number of things that are happening, such as the campus pastors are having Wednesday, let's talk about it, discussions about various topics, prayer and spiritual disciplines and other things. We've got support groups that have been meeting online. We've got Bible studies. Some of the Bible studies are meeting more often than they've ever met in the past. So there's a variety of things that are happening. I'm not specifically certain that I know how to answer this Bible discipleship study, but I would say to whoever asked the question, call your campus pastor next. That would be the next conversation to have.
Mm-hmm. Okay, another question is, are area churches banding together to ask Governor Pritzker to open up the state quicker?
Yeah. So I've started a letter to the governor, and I know that others have. I've been in conversation with other pastors who have written to the governor and asking for, just asking for different consideration, asking for a little bit more of a voice in what's going on. So I actually, so yes, the short answer is yes, that's happening. The longer answer is, I think from all the surveys that I see where people are asked, when will you be ready to go back to church? When will you be ready to go back to all these different things? It looks to me like we need another, we need some more wins for people to feel safe. So I am praying for that, as well as praying for the governor. I'm writing to the governor and trying to move him into conversations to that end, and other pastors are doing the same. And so I would just say to whoever asked the question, pray for our governor, pray for our president, pray for leaders who are being asked to make decisions with less than perfect information. And also, the other thing I would say is I have people saying, when will the church open back up? The church needs to open back up. I think the next thing that is going to happen is going to be a lot more about your small group meeting than it is going to be about, Sunday morning where lots of people open. Again, my friend who said we're opening up, we expect 50% of the people back, had 13% back. And he thinks that number is probably more like 5% back if he took the staff away. So I think I'm writing to Pritzker. I also think there's other issues in play.
Okay, Mike, this is an easy question. We noticed that you are visiting Sherry's parents. Are they okay?
Yes, I have been a delinquent son-in-law on Zoom meetings almost all day, but they've been gracious and they are doing well. And we had Mother's Day. Sherry's nieces are nurses. That's a little bit of a tongue twister. So they were not able to come over because they are very COVID engaged. And so because of that, we didn't get to see them, but we did see her sister, her brother, brother-in-law, and her parents, and her parents are doing well. So thanks for asking.
Another question is, would we consider when we start to open up outdoor services?
Yeah, I think that we are expecting that more things will take place outside, but that's easier on some campuses than others. And the Vernon Hills campus actually has got lots of room if we figure out how to use it. The Crossroads campus has got a huge field. Lake Forest campus, not so much space anymore, but we might consider meeting outside. Now, I just heard that, Independence Grove just closed down for the summer. And so there's some challenges there, but we do expect some of the meetings, especially initially, will take place outdoors. Sherry and I have been hosting some gatherings with friends. Nice little sit down in the driveway. Come on over, bring your own food, sit in the driveway, and we'll socially distance and get together. And I see that there's some opportunities there for small groups. I'm not sure about the church, big C church, but we'll see.
Okay, and then there's a question about what about baptisms, weddings, and funerals?
Yeah, well, so I'm not sure I know what the question, I read an article that said baptisms, weddings, and funerals are one of the places where COVID is probably most frequently shared. So we are doing some weddings. They've been very small. There have been some quiet funeral celebrations, but others sort of put on hold. Some are being Zoom funerals. So everybody's trying to figure this out. I'm not certain I know specifically what the question is. Before we have a baptism, if the concern, for instance, communion, how are we going to have communion without it being infectious? Well, there are ways, and we're already exploring ways that we would mitigate all those risks. So the question is, how would we do a baptism that was safe? We'll figure it out before we do it. I can say that. If the question is, when can they get scheduled? We're still watching the phases and trying to figure out how to open. And again, we expect to comply largely with these requests. So right now it's 10 and under in terms of people.
Okay, and we have a late attender who just joined the meeting who said, are masks required? And to the attender, when we begin to start to meet again, depending on the CDC rules and guidelines, masks will be required. So I think that one was it. I think that's about all the questions we have so far. Oh, one other question. Do we think there's any concerns about liability when we start to reconvene?
Well, perhaps. I mean, I'm just old enough to know, well, I'm not just old enough. I'm definitely old enough to know that anybody can sue anybody over anything, whether there's, leverage that we expect to try and work really hard to keep everybody safe as aggressively as we can move forward, keeping people safe. So we're aware of it. We're talking with people about it. We're watching other churches. So I'm not sure how else to answer that. Sound like a lawyer myself. Okay, now I've offended all the lawyers. My apologies. Please do not email me. So if you have other questions, you can email me. I appreciate everybody tuning on tonight and your concern about the church. God bless you. I look forward for us to be back together and to be on the other side of this. We will get on the other side of this, and we want to leverage this Kairos moment, this opportunity to grow in faith and to be more like Christ and to see the church move forward. And with that, I will say good night.
All right, thanks everyone for joining us. If you have any additional questions, feel free to email.